Let me take you back to 1992. Nirvana and Red Hot Chili Peppers ruled the charts with songs like Smells Like Teen Spirit and Under the Bridge. Kevin McAllister was left home alone again. But what about the gaming scene? Nintendo had ruled the late 80s with the NES, but competitors had closed in. Sega had launched the Genesis, boasting 16-bit graphics and edgier marketing. The pressure was on. Nintendo knew it needed something special. Their answer? The Super Famicom, also known as the Super Nintendo. But what was its story? What did it bring to the table? And more importantly, what is its legacy? Let's dig deeper with Gaming Views.
Dan and Dan with a gaming flair, pixel dreams and worlds to share, joystick tales and button cues. Welcome to Gaming Views. Level up.
Welcome to another episode of Gaming Views, your podcast that's going to take in everything gaming related. I'm Dan P, and I want to introduce my co-host. Now, he's the Super Nintendo of this show. He's solid, reliable, and iconic. He doesn't need flashy gimmicks. On next-gen graphics, Dan is all killer, no filler. A timeless classic with a deep library of wisdom, perfectly balanced opinions, and just the right amount of did you know trivia. He's the kind of co-host you can always count on. I mean, he's my Super Mario, let's say that. Whether we're tackling tough topics or just reminiscing about the golden age of gaming. Honest, dependable, pure pixel-powered passion. Dan H. Hi, Dan.
I don't know how to respond to that. Hi, Dan. I've got a tear in my eye.
Oh, that's the end of the episode.
That was beautiful. That was it. Yeah. I thought you were going to say he's my Super Nintendo because he's old and grey with a little bit of purple, which would have been more apt, to be fair, and probably quicker. But that was wonderful. Thank you, my friend.
Never. No. Yeah, you're my Super Mario. There you go. I was going to say you're
a fat, short plumber.
Well, I was going to say that you're the Mario to my Luigi, but nobody likes Luigi, so
Everyone loves Luigi. He's awesome. I mean, well, he's not great, but he was good in Haunted Mansion. I like that.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, he got his own game. I mean,
exactly.
And talking about Mario, look at over my shoulder. I learned to draw Mario this week.
I'll tell you are getting much improved in the drawing sphere, aren't you? It actually looks like Mario.
Do you know what, right? It's like before this podcast or the last few episodes, I could barely draw a stick figure. And now I can barely draw Mario, but it's there. It's there.
Right? It's 100 times better than your horse.
I love that horse.
It was significant. Did you run out of red?
Oh, do you know what? I don't have red.
Okay. I'm going to get you some red pens just so you can complete the picture. Genuinely, it's really good. I really like it.
Well, thank you very much. I did have a bit of and sorry, obviously, if this makes it into the audio only, please do check over on YouTube. But yeah, I've drawn Mario, and maybe we'll tweet it out. I drew it too high up on the board, so I had to erase it. And I thought, I'm never going to get it right again. But no, fortunately.
You did, and it's very, very good. You got him. You got his likeness perfectly. I mean, if anyone saw that, they wouldn't be going, that's Yoshi. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Mussolini, maybe, but it's definitely it's Mario.
Moving on. Actually, I've got a couple of things. I know you've got a couple of things, but firstly, I got a message. We invoke his name almost every episode. And he didn't say I could say this, but I think it's fine. Joey said it's GIF, not GIF. And I said he's wrong.
He said the same to me.
Did he? I said he's wrong, yeah. But I mean, I still love him, but he's wrong.
He told me it's quite a comfy hill and he's willing to die on it, is what he said.
So it's GIF, not
GIF. Screw you, Joey.
Yeah.
GIFs.
But more importantly...
What do you clean your kitchen with?
Don't, right. I could probably do a half-hour defense on this, but more importantly, what you've been playing.
So we had a little bit more of a go at Split Fiction,
yeah,
which we I think we both enjoyed. I enjoyed. Yeah. So we'll look forward to a review on that from both our perspectives. And thank God, game recording doesn't record our vocals as well.
Yes, yeah. Leave it there.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to play that episode.
No.
And then I picked up because you know how gullible I am, and I kind of go, oh, there's a new thing, and it looks really shiny. I'm a bit of a magpie, and I'll go and get that. So I picked up Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I love it. It is genuinely, but it's got that. It's an apt time to be talking about this. It's got that Nintendo brilliance, that little spark. It's created by the Super Mario Odyssey team. Odyssey was another great game. And it's just genuinely a fantastic game, and I think it's going to be a real Switch 2 seller, to be honest. I mean, you know, apart from Mario Kart World, there's not a lot of reasons to kind of pick up a Switch 2 right now. But this one feels like it could be. So,
nice.
I'm really pleased I picked that up.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you? What you been playing, Dan? How many games you completed this week? That's what I should ask.
2. No, I was going to say, no, I've not played too much. I played a bit of Rematch. That's my go-to quick game, you know, kind of. I've only got 10 minutes or chill out, even though I end up swearing more when I'm playing it. I played a game that's going to be out in a few weeks on Gaming Reviews. So, housekeeping, which we forget. Subscribe to us everywhere you can, especially on our YouTube. We like that. Drop us notes, comments, say hi. We like that even more. We've started doing gaming reviews. I have to say, I can't work out time, but I think your one is going to be out the week this goes live.
Yeah, and first of August, mine. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I can't wait for people to see yours. I feel sorry for you.
So I apologise up front because one, for my review, because it was appalling, but secondly, because of my review, because it was appalling. And you'll get what I mean when you watch it.
Your review is great. Sorry I didn't pick that game instead of you.
I'm not doing any more Cats games, Dan. Right, at the end.
That's it. So I completed a game for Gaming Reviews, so I won't say anything about that just yet. But the main one I completed was Hercule Poirot Murder on the Orient Express. I do love those sort of games. It's those...
I genuinely not. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. There is an Agatha Christie related game, but I didn't know there was. Where'd that come from? What is it on the?
It's on Xbox. Yeah, it's on Xbox. Okay. So I'm sure it'll be on Steam and PC and PlayStation. But yeah, it's one of those sort of puzzle adventure, not adventure like point and click kind of games, but more third person style. It's just I love those sort of games and. I was going to say it's nice chill out, even though it's about a murder on the Orient Express. But, other than that little...
And if you read the book?
Well, I haven't read the book, but I think it is very different. What happens on the train is the same, but then they have another character who's got another sort of side story. So I think that... And it's set in 23, which my wife, she loves Poirot, but didn't like the fact it was modern. So...
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, all the movies are great as well. Even the more recent ones with Kenneth Branagh and that were really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I've been playing. So I know you had a couple of things to talk about.
Oh, just a couple of bits of news. Just today actually. So one was more around just a phenomenon we don't really see very often in gaming. And that's the Switch 2. Today was declared as the fastest selling console in the US ever. Knocking the PlayStation 4 off its perch, which is quite a feat. And I think the PlayStation 4's had that since 2017, I think. So, go on, Nintendo. Yeah, it's a Nintendo-tastic week this week. So it's not Nintendo-don't, it's Nintendo this week. So that was a nice thing to see. And competition is obviously still healthy in the console market. If you haven't watched our Console Wars episode, we will link it up in somewhere up there. Go and watch that and then come back and talk to us, because that includes one of the consoles we're discussing today. And the other bit of news, which is great news for gamers, is that Microsoft announced today that first-party games will be dropping. So they realised the error of their ways, no longer $80, back down to a very reasonable $70. And I think tried to get around it in a very, look at us, we're very cool, via the...
Outer Worlds, wasn't it?
Outer Worlds 2, yes, it was. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, my memory's going again. So announced that way in their very cheeky way that they do. But look, either way, it's great news for gamers. I think it's also a little bit of a sticky plaster over some of the recent naughty things that Microsoft have been doing via their employees. So but lovely to hear all the same. So just two, quite nice pieces of news for today.
Yeah, no, that is. And just on that last one very quickly. It kind of, the layoffs, etc. aside, because obviously that's a bigger thing and separate. But we said last week that, kind of at least Microsoft have where they failed in terms of the gaming side of things, and console, they have reverse decisions, etc. So again, it's at least they're able to do that. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a very PR friendly way to do it through that Twitter account. Yeah.
Like it, didn't it? But look, credit where credit's due. At least the prices have gone down. It was in dollars though, so I haven't seen any reflection on the UK, but I can't imagine it wouldn't. So
1 for 1. We keep saying that. That's our motto, right?
1 for 1. That's what it is where costs concerned with consoles and US and UK. Absolutely. Tariffs not included.
Yeah. No. Moving on. Right, Dan. We are talking about the Super Nintendo, the SNES, or the Super Famicom. Whichever your flavour is. Now,
SNES. It's always the SNES. Yeah. It's always the SNES.
Now, it released in, I've got the 3 dates here. So, released in Japan in November 1990. And the reason why I want to do all 3 markets is a specific point here. So, North America in August 91. So, what's that? Not quite a year later. And UK and Ireland in April 92. So, the key thing here was, it feels really odd that it's almost 2 years. Well, let's say a year and a half, year and 3/4 before it came to our shores here, which I don't think we really see anymore, do we? It's kind of worldwide, or not to that extent.
Global launches normally, and the UK market certainly is always included in that global launch, whether it's, a software thing or a hardware thing. More often than not, the UK is included as a global partner. Yeah, I wonder if it's anything to do with the longevity of the NES, or whether it was to compete against, what Sega were doing with the Genesis. I don't quite know how that played into, what they did from a marketing perspective and why they'd want to delay that launch by nearly 2 years, which feels a bit odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't, or gamers wouldn't allow it now, I think, would they?
Yeah. No, they wouldn't stand for it. Well, was it not 2 years, 18 months? November to, so 18 months. Still weird.
Yeah. I mean, it was priced in the US at $199. That's $459.
So cheap.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You'd bite someone's hand off for a console that cheap these days, wouldn't you?
Well, if we move it up to 2024 price, that'd be $459. And in the UK, it launched at £149, which today, 2025, would be £329.
And it's very interesting. So I was reading something yesterday. I was reading an article yesterday, and someone had uncovered, let's call it uncovered, some leaked architecture from potentially the PS6 or potentially a Microsoft's new console. And they weren't quite sure. There was an ongoing debate as to whose architecture it was relevant to. And they think it's probably more likely Microsoft, because in development stages, Sony's normally use code names associated with Shakespeare plays, and this one didn't have that. So they think it may have been Microsoft's, but based on the architecture, there was a lot of debate in forums and things about the potential of these consoles costing upwards of $1,000 the next generation, which is, unheard of. But then, the PS5 Pro coming out at nearly 700. So it's potential, there's potential there depending on what it is and the AMD architecture. So yeah, it was just a very interesting article, but very scary.
It is scary because, I sent you a link today, didn't I, to like the Steam Deck 2's coming out, but also, so I think another price. And we're looking at, we're expecting the Ally X or whatever to be around
ROG Ally X, the
800, do we think? And that's for,
I think 800 for the top tier,
Yeah, I don't mean to belittle it by calling it a handheld, because it's more than that, but we are calling it a compact system. So yeah. Be interesting.
They are handhelds in all but name, but they're mini PCs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what they are. And to be fair, I was looking at some, micro desk PCs today that were going to be £1,000 for, but the performance of those things, little nucks, they're kind of tiny, but the performance of those things is off the scale, so they're not comparative, but then they haven't got a screen, they haven't got all the gubbins and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was, but it's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. For the SNES though, it ended its life in Europe.
The poor thing. What was wrong? Who was suffering?
I should say it got discontinued in Europe in 98. So that's a 6-year lifespan. North America 99, and in Japan it was 2003. So it quite late on for that. So that's a 13-year life for that. And just before I ask you a personal question about it, so it went on to do 49.1 million sales worldwide, with 23.3 in North America, 17 in Japan, and elsewhere 8.5 million. Now, firstly, I mean, show how great that was in America. Again, they took to it. SNES, Super Nintendo, Super Famicom. Did you have one? You did have one.
Oh,
So what's your experience? Because I didn't.
Okay.
And I didn't know anyone who did at the time.
So I'll tell you a little story, Dan. So I had a friend who lived down the road from me, a chap named Sean French. Hi, Sean, if you're around. Lovely to speak to you again. Lovely guy. And his mum ran Littlewood's catalogues, right? And at the time, I was a paper boy, as I think I've mentioned previously when we've talked about the game Paperboy. But I was also, this is going to sound weird now, a milk boy, which is not what you think it is, but probably what you think it is if your mind isn't in the gutter. So I used to help the local milkman, another guy called Sean. And I used to earn money. So I had a little bit of, disposable income when I was, when this machine came out. So what did we say? 92. So, yeah. So what was I? God, that's maths now. I was something years old, 16, something like that.
Yeah, around that.
And around about that. So Sean's mum ran Littlewood catalogues. For anyone who doesn't know what Littlewood catalogues are, they are basically Klarna in the old days. Right, there you go. That's what they were. You could buy something and pay for it over a period of months. Right,
that's a brilliant analogy.
I had to pay Sean's mum. Right, it's getting weirder. Anyway, so I with the permission of my mum, I probably just did it. I went and bought a Super Nintendo from the Littlewood's catalogue. Now, what you got to remember about those is I didn't get it for $1.99 because Littlewood's put a premium on everything. So I think it was probably about 270 quid. But it came with Super Mario World.
Okay.
So I had one, bloody loved it. I think primarily I used it for probably about 4 games, which was Super Mario World, Star Fox, Legend of Zelda, and probably Pilot Wings or something similar, something like that. So yeah, I had one. I loved it. It was my first proper. I had a Master System. And I had a Mega Drive, but it felt like my first proper grown up, because I bought it myself, I think, my first proper console. So yeah, I loved it. I had a little CRT TV in the bedroom and used to, plugged it into that and played on that. And then when everyone went out, I'd take it downstairs on the biggest screen downstairs, play on the telly.
What a story. Because you see, I think I've said before, I missed all the consoles. And I didn't really know many friends who did have them either. So this completely passed me by. And a cousin had the Nintendo 64, which I'm sure at some point will do. But, just those games you mentioned, I mean, if you could have known at the time, but what classics you would have been playing,
Yeah. I mean, I had F-Zero for a little while, but I've never been a massive fan of racing games. So I kind of had it. And it was that time. There were a few of my friends who had consoles, and it was that time where, and remember people, this is before the days of trading, before the days of, these are big chunky console cartridges. You take them into school and you swap them with your mates.
Yeah.
And then you go home at the end of the day going, I've got a new game.
Yeah,
I've got a new game to play. So, that whole culture was really prevalent in those days. So, you didn't have to, it was like, if your mate had it, they had one of yours. It was almost like a hostage situation. So they had one of yours, you had one of theirs. You know what I mean? So you could keep it as long as you wanted and then, trade it back. But yeah, I went a bit overboard with the SNES. I ended up buying the light bazooka. So
really?
I had that as well. Yeah. So I had all the gimmicky toys. I think this is where my, let's call it problem with buying new technology probably started, Dan.
Really? Yeah.
I know this isn't a counselling session. It probably feels like one, but I think that's where it all started, Dan. It's back in my childhood, buying a SNES.
But also, I mean, I can't remember, and I was just quickly trying to look. Sort of cartridges back in the time, they weren't particularly cheap either, were they?
No, they weren't CD-ROM tech. I mean, the games, I guess, at the time were what, 40, 50 quid, something like that. I mean,
yeah, that's what I kind of remember. Yeah,
it was a lot of money, you know, and I can remember because, you know, Nintendo had their seal of approval, which was their, you know, you had a little gold stamp on everything. Do you remember that? Like, you know, and I mean, we'll get to talk about the SNES and developers and stuff, but yeah, I love my machine. It was my baby.
Excellent.
Yeah.
No, the closest I had was the mini one they launched a few years ago. So,
yes. I'm going to do that thing. Give me 2 seconds.
We'll play some hold music right here.
One of these.
There you go. Yes, look at
Yes, one of these. Yeah. As if by magic. Excuse the dust, ignore the dust. There's no Nintendo seal of approval on this one, but yes, a small mini Nintendo with the horrible gamepads it came with.
Oh, before I move on, actually, very quickly, it was in the news last week. I think the BBC committed a horrific crime of. Did you see that? They were doing an article, weren't they? A video, like an on-screen article. Yeah. On Nintendo. Was it Nintendo or consoles? But they had a SNES console. And they jammed in a NES cartridge, hadn't they, into it?
And I am going to put a picture of it up because I did get a picture of it. Yes, I did see it. And I thought, that's going to come in handy one day.
Yeah.
Not for blackmailing the BBC or anything, because I don't think consoles will get that big.
I mean, if that had worked. Right. So what was the console
Is that early backwards compatibility?
I mean, well, I wouldn't try playing that cartridge again, or maybe even that SNES. That's the thing.
Blowing it'll be fine. Blowing
you know, when a bit of plastic comes off, that's never a good sign. Right. So we said it launched in 92 in the UK. So what was the market it was coming into? So I think you alluded to it last week that the mid to late 80s, so Nintendo had dominated it with the NES. But then we started getting more competitors in, and, you know, they were probably coming in with more sort of superior graphics, faster games, and the marketing, I think we said differentiated, didn't we? Like Sega, we said, was the edgier, hipper kind of.
It kind of exploded, didn't it?
Yeah. So, and the other thing for the European landscape is that it was very fragmented. So, you know, we had a slower evolving market where it was. Computers were probably still more dominant, right? And console gaming was slowly becoming more of a thing. Now, I had a look to see what its competitors at the time would have been. So, and I'm still surprised at some of these, how late. So you've got the Commodore 64 was still technically around, the ZX Spectrum, the Amiga 500, which for me is my all-time dream machine.
See, I was an ST boy.
Well, that's it, the Atari ST.
Oh my God, that even sounds really bad. I was an Atari ST boy.
We need to do an episode on that. Not about that. You. Not about you, but about the Atari and your Amiga.
Not on Dan's faux pas and double entendres.
I mean, you had the Sega Mega Drive.
Yes.
So that was late 90s, so that was there. You had the NES still. I think they said, but the issue the NES had in Europe was distribution was uneven. Master System... This one surprised me. You still had the Atari 2600 and 7800 said still kicking around in some parts of Europe.
Yeah.
The TurboGrafx PC Engine, which again I'd forgotten about until I saw this.
But that was ridiculously expensive to buy. You were essentially buying an arcade board for those things, weren't you?
Well, and that's it. And the Neo Geo next with it as well. Yeah. So that was pretty similar in that sense. The Game Boy was still huge. It came out in 89. The Game Gear, the Atari Lynx. So, you know, we look at it now and we said here, mainly you've got the Xbox, PlayStation and Switch now. I've just reeled off all those things that were in Europe at the time. And that's the market it was contending with.
Yeah. Well, I guess comparatively now you have got, you know, like your Steam Decks. And I mean, I know they're all based on a similar, I mean, Steam Deck's Linux, but you know, they're all based on a similar premise, like they're a handheld PC or like. But I guess it is broad. My point is, it is broader than just Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, but in a different way. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't feel like any of those are going anywhere like maybe Atari did, you know, with the Lynx kind of just died.
No, but I think. Sorry, what I was trying to say is that. Nowadays, though, most people will have still probably one of those, even if you've got that.
Absolutely.
But you know, back in the day, I had an Amiga and that was it. You know? And maybe then got the Game Boy later on.
Yeah. Yeah, you know you did.
Yeah. So we're talking, like I said, very fragmented, very disparate as well. You've got the Atari 2600 still clinging on. So what did Nintendo want to do? So it was their second home console. It had to compete with the Mega Drive and the Genesis. So what I like, and what you've always said, or what we've always said as well about Nintendo, that it's not just sort of, better, faster, stronger. That their ethos is different. Their ethos wasn't to be the strongest, it was to be the smartest. Now, they wanted to stay ahead of Sega, specifically, and focus on game quality, so not just raw hardware power. So in comes the three, and I'm going to apologise for the pronunciations here, but the key people in the SNES, you've got Masayuki Umura, lead hardware designer, and he designed the original Famicom. Hiroshi Yamauchi, who's Nintendo's president at the time, and Gunpei Yokoi, who was one of the main designers on the Game Boy. So, if you obviously look at that, the Famicom and NES already did gangbusters. You've got the Game Boy, so you've got the sort of the real key people there. And the other thing I want to say, like Famicom, is, again, you mentioned it before, family computer. So again, the legacy or the heritage of that naming there. So their design philosophy was to maintain a family-friendly image, avoid the edgy or aggressive tone of Sega's marketing, focus on long-lasting appeal of franchises like Mario, Zelda and Metroid, and prioritise cartridge-based media for faster load times and less piracy than CDs. So, yeah, any views around that philosophy?
Look, I think you made a lot of sense in it, and it certainly held in good stead for them for a long time. I mean, we've said before they didn't produce their first disc-based console until the GameCube, and even then they didn't go with standardized technology. So the N64 still cartridge-based, and then your GameCube, again to reduce piracy, smaller discs, not based on CD technology. I can't remember what the Wii used. What did the Wii use? Was the Wii disc-based? But that was more standardized DVD-based. It had the little slot at the front, and they're now gone back to cartridge-based with the Switch.
Yeah.
They've obviously, they've stuck to their guns in terms of their philosophy. Family-friendly, absolutely, right? I mean, these guys, and focusing on core franchises. I think that's spreading a lot more now with the Switch too. I was looking through their sales today, and they've got a bunch of stuff that you wouldn't ever have expected to see on a Nintendo console. But what's interesting about that is it didn't do them the power of good, and we've talked about in our last episode about franchises jumping ship and things like that. And that was, they had this, I said they had the seal of quality, but that actually limited them to, they had only allowed 4 non-first party games released a year. So they with the SNES. So, this is something they did. And I think it's, look, they haven't done bad, but, at the time, I think it made a lot of people move away, particularly when Sony entered the market. So it was a detriment to them at the time. But yeah, look, you can't blame them for that philosophy. And it's, like I said, it's held them in good stead, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, but that's what I want to really reiterate again, is that, it's not just about putting that extra teraflop of processing power. I mean, look at that, family-friendly image, win the parents over, ultimately. That's clever, right?
All the
there,
paper
right?
boys. All the paper boys.
Paper/milk boys.
Milk boys.
Not wanting to be aggressive, not wanting to mimic Sega. So again, it kind of takes a bold step to say, right, no, we're not going to follow or stoop almost to our competitors.
And different works in marketing, works. We see it all the time in different types of marketing for different products. Somebody does something weird or odd or strange, and people go, oh, look at that thing over there, for good or bad.
Yeah, and they can't then keep the family-friendly image as well if they want to start attacking, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
The long-lasting appeal classics, we'll come on to that. But again, focusing on cartridges because they want to avoid piracy, and that means more money there in their pockets, right? So again, it's just pure sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, they've not done bad for themselves. They've done all right, Nintendo, haven't they? I mean, we've literally just said it. That philosophy is working. They've just launched the fastest selling console
Yeah.
in the US ever.
Yeah.
Right? Literally said it like 10, 15 minutes ago. So, and it's just announced today. So they're doing something right.
Yeah, it's a fair play, Nintendo, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah. And they even with the Switch 2, they tried as hard as possible to make sure there were enough consoles to go round so that you didn't have the scalpers and the people trying to oversell on eBay and things like that, because there was enough to go around. Now, it's never going to be enough, right? They're never going to produce enough. They didn't. And the way they did that maybe wasn't the best way, but you had to have been on Nintendo's, online for the last year, and you had to have played it for a certain number of hours. It's a bit of a crazy way to go about it. Or you just waited online really early and jumped online and picked one up like I did. But, they were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, they just had to, with that, contend with a certain store in the States stapling the screen when they were stapling the receipts to the box. But again, that's not...
They were flogging those on eBay.
It's not for this episode. Its development started in 87, so obviously, as anything, it's just the early stages. So Nintendo were having their internal discussions. The Famicom was still highly successful, so that they had a bit of time to play with, I think, rather than trying to rush out their console. 88, 89, their design was finalised. Now, this is the interesting thing. So they worked with Ricoh for their CPU, but something we mentioned before, they worked with Sony for their sound chip. And if people remember, and if you haven't, go see our PlayStation episode. But Dan, how did that relationship with Sony end?
Well, for gamers, phenomenally well, because we ended up with a PlayStation. For Nintendo, maybe not so great, but yeah, I mean, it all worked out in the end.
In the end, for us gamers, yeah, and as for Nintendo, aren't doing too bad. So yeah, they worked with Sony for their sound chips. So the console was using the Ricoh 5822 processor. It was allowed it for quite a powerful performance while retaining, and this is a key thing we've said in a number of episodes, familiarity for developers that were used to the NES's architecture. So we've said a couple of times they didn't want to push to be more powerful. Why not? So Nintendo's ethos was that software and game design, not raw hardware specs, were the key to success, and they opted for Mode 7 graphics. Now, Mode 7 is something that's probably going to come up, or in any conversational article about the Super Nintendo is going to come up.
Definitely.
So, can you remember what Mode 7 was?
It was their pseudo 3D rendering technique, basically. So it was more. I think I said before, it was more kind of parallax rotation and scaling of backgrounds to kind of give the effect. So prime examples of that would have been F-Zero, it would have been Pilot Wings, it would have been Star Fox. All of those had that tech. Not everything had it, but those. But yeah, I remember it because they were, like I said before, they were primarily the games I ended up playing. So. But yeah, it was, look, at the time, it was phenomenal because nothing else was doing it. But you look at it now and it looks shit.
Well, I want to know what happened to Mode 1 to 6, but...
Threw them in a bin. I just tried them. Didn't work.
But no, you're right. So Mode 7 was Nintendo's secret weapon. So it was a graphical technique that basically made flat 2D backgrounds look like 3D environments. So, it played a major role in making the SNES stand out from its competitors. And it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't real 3D, but it was close enough to stun people and to blow people away at the time. The other thing was it had no loading. So unlike CD-based games, the Mode 7 effects ran straight off the cartridge, which again is a clever decision there. And it was also cost effective. So developers didn't need to have expensive hardware or large polygon counts. They could do fake 3D basically. So... And to put it even simpler, it allowed one background layer to be rotated, scaled, skewed, or stretched. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. And it may sound really basic, but again, go back in time 30 years and tell yourself that paperboy you that this is a simple
Totally.
thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for those who've never seen it, and I'll put stuff up here, but for those who are listening on audio, imagine some really rubbish 90s dance music videos, right, in the background of those. That's what Mode 7 looked like if you were around then.
But that's the thing, there was no 3D graphics processor, right? So it did what it could. And as you said, the games it was going to be used with were F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Super Mario Kart, and Final Fantasy VI, which I was surprised about. So
I don't think I ever played it, but I imagine there was something shoved in there somewhere, whether it was traveling between I definitely remember Secret of Mana using it when you got in the cannons and got shot across the landscape. Right. They used it for that. So, there would have been something somewhere. Yeah.
What was the legacy of Mode 7? Now, we've said it's not 3D, but it did lay the groundwork for 3D. So it inspired 3D techniques in the N64 and the PS1. Many indie and retro games today are kind of trying to go for that. And like you've said yourself, anything trying to emulate those old dance videos. There was a quote here. It was just a symbol of SNES's and Nintendo's ingenuity, right, to push hardware to do more than it should or could.
Yeah. But something else I remember quite well about the SNES, not just Mode 7, which, like you said, anytime you mention it, the SNES, that kind of image pops into your head. But I also remember they did a lot of games, more so than maybe, I don't even know if Genesis did any, but with a lot of pre-rendered 3D models. So like Donkey Kong Country came out and that was all pre-rendered 3D and models, not 3D as in, and there were a number of games. There was like a one based about a clay character that could change into different things. And they did a lot of, once it became a thing, a lot of developers started doing that as well. And they're the two kind of primary, visuals that I remember from the SNES really well, kind of Mode 7 and pre-rendered 3D models on a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, incredible, really. And, I mean, if you get a chance to put a video up or if people just have a look and have a look at those games, I would just...
there'll be videos, Dan. There'll be videos.
And especially, like you said, I mean, Mario Kart for me is probably F-Zero and Mario Kart are the ones that are going to stand out for me. And again, it sounds funny in a kart racer, right? But it's the rotation of the course, wasn't it? Things like that. Yeah.
But Pilot Wings was actually the showcase for Mode 7. I mean, it was Pilot Wings was. So I don't know if you did you ever play Pilot Wings?
No.
So it was an island-based game where you essentially just did different flying challenges in different modes of kind of flying things, whether you were parachuting or microlight or, so it was, there were various different modes of air transport you could use, but all designed to show off the movement and scaling of the background. That's essentially what it was. Almost like a Mode 7 demo.
Okay.
It's like everything had it. Everything you did had that. So, it was a great game, and it was great stuff. And when your mates came around, that was the thing. Oh, look at it! Look what it can do. You put on Pilot Wings. Look at it, or F-Zero, because obviously that as well was the showcase as well.
Yeah, and then Microsoft just started doing their screensavers, all these fractals and everything, and just did it as a screensaver.
You got a game? I got it when you walk away from your PC. Thanks.
The other thing to call out about it was, and we mentioned it briefly before we started recording, but unusually there were two different models, wasn't there? One for the Japanese market and one for, everywhere else.
The Japanese one on my little thing, which I can show. Yeah, it's the Japanese one up there.
Well, I guess firstly, which one were you happier with? I mean, which one did you like?
I had the one that was released in Europe, so I had the rounded edge and I was always quite jealous of the other one though, mainly because the flashes are purple. I quite liked it.
Yeah. It was odd though, isn't it? It's odd to have two different. So do you know anything around why there were two different models?
No idea.
Yeah, and again, it's Nintendo, right? It's so basically when you're looking into it, they were functionally pretty much identical, but the physical designs were very intentional. So basically, they wanted to match the SNES in America to kind of the more popular electronics that were there at the time, like VCR recorders, stereos, etc. And Nintendo of America believed America preferred larger, more rugged-looking electronics.
Oh, so
right?
that's why it was squared off at the edges, and because the European one, the UK, we're softer, clearly, with our rounded edges.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got a few rounded edges. That's probably why I'm not chiseled like a Famicom.
Well, that's it. It said it's associated boxy shapes with durability and power. Don't know.
Definitely not me. See, I
was going to say
the
with
softer,
me.
chunkier one. Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. Nintendo wanted the SNES to feel like a generational leap over the NES, and it said a different exterior emphasised that this was a new, more advanced product, not just an upgrade or a regional copy. Now, it says that the multicoloured buttons were kept in Europe, but not in North America, when Nintendo again thought simpler two-tone buttons would be more visually aligned with
on
their
the controller.
taste.
Is this?
Yeah. But the last point I thought was fascinating. So the different shells of the boxes of the console, helped enforce regional lockouts. So Japan, North America, and PAL regions had different cartridge shapes and slots. So the Super Famicom were rounded and smaller. No, and the SNES were larger with indents. So the physical difference prevented casual importing of foreign games. So again, just
it's a way to region lock, isn't it? You can't even fit the thing in.
Well, just ask the BBC. They found out all about that we mentioned earlier. But
I'm sure this is a European cartridge.
But again, I mean, I didn't know that, and I just thought, well, they've done it just to differentiate the models, the markets. But again, that level of detail tells me all you need to know about the designers.
Meticulous, aren't they? Yeah. Nintendo, they just they know their stuff, and they make these little tweaks and adjustments. But that's fascinating that it was more around region locking. Yeah.
It's incredible. The other thing, I think I've got it lower down, but I want to talk about it now as well, that I didn't know until I did this episode, the research. It invented the diamond layout of the buttons. We didn't have that before.
Yeah, but the one that everyone has now on every controller.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So we've got the SNES to thank for that. So prior to that, it was kind of either, it was either 2 or 3 buttons, and they were either laid out maybe at a diagonal or flat, weren't they? But yeah, this introduced the ABXY diamond shape.
I wonder if they took inspiration from the old Street Fighter 2 cabinets where you had 6 buttons and they were diagonal above and below each other.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they kind of took inspiration from that because there was quite a few fighting games on the SNES.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 2, one of. Street Fighter 2 Turbo was one of.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, won't talk about that. Let's said about that about. But yeah, so maybe they took some inspiration from that. I mean, I think the Nintendo primarily in its day was actually more of an RPG machine, to be honest. I mean, it had so many RPGs on it.
Yeah, that kind of what took me back by that. And it will come on to after, but they kind of redefined that genre. Yeah. But yeah,
great RPGs as well. I mean, I'm replaying one of them at the moment. But
really?
Yeah.
Which one's that?
Link to the Past.
Oh,
on the Switch 2, you got when you're on the online thing, they give you access to a load of SNES back catalogue. There's about 50 games there. They're all brilliant.
Okay.
But the first one that caught my eye was Link to the Past, and oh my God, I'm playing it again. So I started playing that again.
But does it have the greatest RPG ever?
Football Manager?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
No.
And
Stop.
if you've not been with us long, go back to the RPG episode to find out the meaning behind that. Yeah.
Put a link up there somewhere.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
Right. So we've discussed why it was designed the way it was and the little ideas that went into it. Launch titles. So what could you play on it at launch? So there was some variations, but when you look at it, and we've talked previously about some launch titles on some certain consoles just not necessarily being great. The Gizmondo didn't have it pretty much anything, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. Yeah? So in Europe, you would get it with Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Super R-Type, and Super Tennis, which, the first 4 alone. I mean, what games? We've just said ourselves that legendary.
This is a key point, though, right? This is the time of our life when consoles came with a game, right? It wasn't a special edition.
Yeah.
It wasn't a PlayStation 5 painted to look like Spider-Man and you got the game with it, or a code for a game, you got a physical game in the box with it, right? And I went, because in the catalogue, you had an option. You could have chosen which model you wanted with which game you wanted. And I went for Super Mario World, right? Because it was brilliant, in all honesty. And it was massive. And people still now doing speed runs and unlocking things. And, so it's just a work of art. But very quickly got some other games. But so I went for Super Mario World. But I do remember, I forgot about the tennis one as well.
I can imagine I would go for Super Mario World as well. And I can imagine a majority of people would, right? Even back then.
Classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
And it would definitely feed into something later on regarding the games. And the other thing to point out is, I guess, the advantage that the UK and Europe got is because it did launch so much later, there was a wider range of games already.
Totally.
So not that we could afford them at that age.
Well, unless you had a paper around the milk run down.
Yeah. So America got Super Mario World, F-Zero, Pilot Wings, Gradius 3, and SimCity, which I found interesting being on.
It's a bitch to play.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, those were the launch titles, but the list of games on there, it's just some of the iconic ones. So again, some other franchises, right? You said it.
Yeah.
Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country series, Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, which I know is still beloved even now, Street Fighter 2, to go back to what you were saying, Mega Man X, Super Mario Kart. I mean, those games are still heralded now as almost pinnacles, right?
100%. And we talked last week about innovation in games and things like that. And the thing to, certainly for any younger listeners or people who weren't maybe around, and playing games at that time, like you and I were, this is what I think is the golden age of gaming, because at that time, everything was new. It wasn't just a rehash of what had been before. So now when you play a game, and it's got a label, it's a platform, or if it's a Dark Souls type RPG, or it's a, none of that existed. None of those things. So almost everything you played was exclusively a new type of thing. There were some buckets you could put stuff into and go, well, it was like a platform. Metroid, right? Every other game you release now, budget or indie, is a Metroidvania. Where the hell do you think they got that name from, right? Yeah. It was either Metroid or Castlevania, which both did similar things in a different way. Castlevania, yes, you jumped through and you had to go up platforms and fight your way through harder bosses. Metroid was that, but then you could only unlock certain things by getting certain skills. So then they mashed the two together like we do with lots of things these days in terms of naming conventions. But they're both completely separate genres that got mashed up. None of them existed though. Right, they may have been on the SNES, but the advantages that developers took with leaps in technology meant that everything was fresh and new, and that's what I mean by the golden age. Because it was like when you got a game home and you put it in, it wasn't like I played that the other day and it was set in space rather than medieval times, and it was a bit like this. You'd never done it.
Yeah,
you'd never played a Star Fox.
Yeah,
you'd never played that time. You might have played Star Wars Trench Run at the arcades, but you'd never played Star Fox and been able to go wherever you want and
in your living room.
It was the gaming moment, right? And I think that's why you and I are such massive fans of gaming as well, because we were in that moment. We lived it.
And the other thing that's hit me when you're saying that is, and again, without saying, back in those days we didn't have much or this or that. We said cartridges were probably around the 40 quid, maybe more, right? I seem to recall the Nintendo 64 potentially being 50 to 60 quid. So, back then we didn't have the internet and online stores, etc. So you would only buy a game every now and then, right? So the game you bought had to be good, right? Didn't it? And it had to mean something to you. And
it had to be. You had to trawl through magazines and read reviews. Not the internet. Paper magazines. You have to save up money to buy a magazine.
Yeah.
To trawl through the reviews to see what was popular, or you borrowed it from your mate.
Yeah.
And if he wanted it back in a couple of days because it was that good that he wanted to get back on it, you went, I love that. I'm going to go and buy it.
So I completely forgot the swapping games with friends. Wow.
It's the thing. Before Pokemon cards, Dan, it was games.
catch them all.
Got to collect them all.
But it's like now, the thing is, especially online sales like on the Xbox store, games get discounted so heavily, so quick. You can have a huge backlog. I mean, we joke now about backlogs, right? Every game talks about the backlogs.
Never would have happened then.
You couldn't, because like I said, you could only buy that game. And like I said, I think that's what makes this story so much nicer. And the story you said about you saving up, you were having to do the paper round, and the paper round and milk rounds were thankless, right? They were thankless.
Totally. And unless you got to Christmas, because sometimes Mrs. Miggins would leave you a tip taped to the letterbox with a couple of £1 inside it, which is always a bonus, or the milkman, but yeah, it was just a different time, a very different time. I sound really old saying this, but it was a very different time. But it was a beautiful time as well, because, like you say, and there wasn't as much clutter in the gaming world. I got it slightly wrong earlier, but so Nintendo limited third-party developers to only launching 5 games a year, right? So third-party developers could only launch 5 games a year, but that meant, what developer could churn out 5 games anyway, right? But it meant that you weren't getting the plethora of games, and you didn't have the bedroom coders and things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with them. We love half of their games, but there were so few games launching and coming out, and the market wasn't as oversaturated as it is now. You had 2 primary players in Nintendo and Sega, that when you got, like you said, when you got a game, it was, it was like magic dust. It was like, oh my God, it's, and so you played it to death.
Yeah. And, look, it's not, in today's world, it wouldn't be acceptable, but back then, chunky cartridge in a big box with a manual, and it was, it was everything you wanted, wasn't it?
No limited editions. Go and watch the limited editions, collector's editions episode. We'll link it up there. But, none of that. This was all, you box, and sometimes those manuals were massive.
Yeah,
like there was a lot went into printing those.
It was a complete package, wasn't it? You weren't just buying the game. It was an experience. I know that sounds really cliched, but it's
no
true.
Download codes.
Yeah.
No day one patches.
Yeah.
No DLC.
It just worked out the box.
It just worked out the box.
Most times, yeah. No, but it did. It just worked out the box, yeah. But this is it, and it did redefine genres. So, when you look at it, action platformers, you just said it. So you got Super Metroid, Mega Man, redefined controls, exploration, progression systems that today, and you called it Metroidvania, right? RPGs, games like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound gave emotional storytelling into these games for the first time. Complex characters, branching narratives, which are all standard today. Now, Super Mario Kart introduced the kart racing, right? And the mascot racer.
And how many of them are there now, Dan?
Well, exactly.
Everyone's got one. Sonic's got one.
Garfield's got one.
Garfield's got a good one, apparently.
Yeah,
yes. Never played it,
but. And competitive split screen multiplayer, right? And power ups. So it introduced that. You called it out, fighting games. Street Fighter 2 helped popularize fighting games at home and normalize the competitive versus mode. So it's sometimes you can feel like you're going over the top when you're talking about something we say from our past is iconic, but just look at what it's brought to the history, right?
All day long. And the number of Double Dragon type fighting games that were out were monstrous.
I love that.
Like Final Fight and Fatal Fury and all of those types of games. There were tons of them on the SNES. Yeah. Absolutely tons of them, because they were easy and quick to make. And they all look like each other, to be fair. They're all exactly the same, just reskin versions of each other. But they, screw it, I'm going to go and buy it.
But so we talked about games. So I want to do something that I always think is unfair to you.
That's all right. I like you being unfair, don't
I got the top 10 list of selling games. And actually, going back to what you said, only 2 were not published by Nintendo.
That's going to make it slightly easier.
Well, yeah, and I'll give you the clue. Those 2 were Capcom. So I'll give you the clue.
Okay,
there.
So one of them Street Fighter 2 then.
Yeah, but all right, Street Fighter 2. Well, I'll give you 2 there. 2 of them are Street Fighter 2. So,
okay, Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Turbo?
No, well, Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior, that is 5th.
I remember that.
Number 5, that was 6.3 million. And Street Fighter 2 Turbo was 9th. So you've got the two Capcom
Street
ones.
Fighter 2 Turbo. I've got a story about Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but I'm not allowed to tell it. I'll tell you
Oh, okay.
after
All right.
this.
Tell me off air. And then
It's got to do with sixth form at school and drugs, but I'll tell you another time. Let's just say that. I very nearly missed an exam.
right. Can you tell me what the other 8 games were?
Let's go Super Mario World. It's got to be on there.
That's number 1. Now, part of the reason is they say because it was bundled in with things. But
great.
number 1,
which means F-Zero is probably in there.
Well, hold on. Super Mario World, 20.6 million copies.
Okay.
What did you say? F-Zero?
F-Zero.
No, strangely not.
Okay. Super Mario Kart.
Super Mario Kart number 4 with 8.7.
If F-Zero's not in there, Pilot Wings probably isn't. Link to the Past? Legend of Zelda?
Yep, that's 7 with 4.6.
Super Metroid?
Super Metroid, no.
Donkey Kong Country?
Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest, is which I've just seen the name. Of course, that's and that. I just got the name there. 5.1 million.
God. And they're all Nintendo.
Yeah. Probably getting harder now because you've only got a
Super
couple.
Mario 2 Yoshi's Island?
Yep, that's there. That's 8th with 4.1 million. I've forgotten which ones you haven't done now, to be fair.
All right, go for them.
Yeah,
go for them, because I'm not going to get any others.
I won't give the numbers, but number 1, Super Mario World. 2, Super Mario All-Stars. 3, Donkey Kong Country. 4, Super Mario Kart. 5, Street Fighter 2 World Warrior. 6, Donkey Kong Country 2.
I did have Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah. I cheated you. 7 is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. 8, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. 9, Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And number 10 was Star Fox.
I said Star Fox earlier. I didn't even think when I was saying it. Yeah, love Star Fox.
Right, so it's only right we then look at the competition of the Super Nintendo.
What was it? Can't remember.
Sorry? Oh, yeah.
Can't remember.
So led by mainly
Did it have blast processing?
It does what Nintendo don't, apparently. That's all I remember.
Nintendo.
But the main competitors were led by Sega, but there were other consoles out there. So if we'll go through the main ones here. So the Sega Genesis Mega Drive, so released in 88. Strengths. So it came out 2 years earlier than the SNES, so it had the head start. Marketed as a cooler, edgy alternative, which we picked up on, and had a strong library of fast, action-oriented games. So Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Shinobi, Phantasy Star Force.
Shinobi.
Yeah, it's
based.
Yeah. It's weak.
The arcade.
Its weaknesses though were it was less advanced graphics and sound compared to the SNES, but we did say it came out earlier.
Couldn't do orchestra hits. Is that that's the problem?
I just flashed back to your edit of the video for that. Fewer RPGs and story-driven games, and fragmentation from multiple hardware add-ons like the CD and the 32X.
32X, yeah.
So anything else about the Mega Drive for you that we haven't sort of said?
No, I did have one. I can't remember how I got one, but it's all right. It wasn't a SNES. Genuinely, I did have both. I think I got I think I got the Mega Drive later, actually, weirdly. But whether it's just nostalgia kicking in because of the discussion we've been having, but I do remember the SNES and the fact that I've bought a mini one, I think speaks volumes because it I just remember it so fondly.
Yeah, my memory is that I think the SNES looked and felt better, and that's not, I'm not just talking about performance here because it is 2 years later, but just generally how well it was received in the country.
Was it the Sony to Nintendo's to Sega's Microsoft?
Who knows? It's a console wars all over. We mentioned it earlier, the TurboGrafx 16, so the PC engine.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I still don't know why that was called a PC engine. It had nothing to do with PC architecture.
Yeah, well, it was mainly, I think it was a big competitor in Japan. So the strengths was It was the first 16-bit console on the market. It's not the PC, like you said. Though technically 8-bit CPU and 16-bit GPU.
Right.
It had arcade quality ports and a strong library in Japan. And it was popular in Japan with hit titles like Bonk's Adventure and Rondo of Blood, which those two feel like they're at opposite ends.
Rondo of Blood.
Yeah, Rondo of Blood. And
Rondo of Blood.
Yeah.
Right, I'm looking that one up.
Yeah.
Never had a thing to call a game.
Weaknesses, poor marketing, minimal third-party support in America, and lacked a recognisable mascot like Mario or Sonic. Now,
yeah,
for me, the
not Rondo.
No,
Okay.
Rondo didn't pick up, or Bonk. But
or Bonk.
I knew, obviously, growing up, I knew of the turbo graphics. I read about it, but I didn't know what it was or ever saw one. So, same for you? Or?
Yeah, never saw one. Yeah, knew what it was.
It existed.
Heard of it. Yeah, heard of it. All of these things felt like far-flung consoles that you'd never get a chance to look at.
Yeah. The next one is one, and it's funny, I saw an article about this the other day. I desperately wanted one, but knew I never could because of the price. It was the Neo Geo. And we said before.
That was the arcade board one, wasn't it? That was, yeah.
So it was a high-end console aimed at hardcore gamers. It was, so the strengths was, it was true arcade perfect graphics and sound. So it actually shared hardware with the SNK arcade machines. Great for fighting games, so Fatal Fury, King of Fighters. Now, the weaknesses were, it was a niche appeal, so not necessarily a mass market threat to the SNES, but the big one is, it was extremely expensive. It was $600 plus at launch in 1990. So we're looking at, I think, over $1,000 now. So incredible. And the cartridges, and this is the other thing, I remember the price in England. So there were $200 cartridges. I think in England they were 130 to 150 pounds. So that's a game. I mean,
per game.
We said you
but
could,
it was an arcade board. It was basically an arcade board in a plastic box that you were putting in.
You could buy the SNES for the price of one Neo Geo game. But I remember really wanted it because, as Dan said, you were getting true quality arcade games at home.
Pixel perfect arcade.
Yeah.
Although the screen, well, even the screens, because arcade machines were only really CRT monitors with the boards plugged into the bottom of them. So they were still the same thing, just didn't have the housing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
$200. Wow. Okay. So I didn't know.
And they came with a proper fighting stick as well.
Yeah, it was like a proper 6-button, I think. Yeah, proper joystick.
Yeah.
I didn't have any friends who had that, strangely enough, either. So yeah,
they're not about anymore, are they?
Was it the Neo Geo? Well,
Neo Geo.
Well, they did. Recently, they did. I think they did release like a new version, like a mini version of it as well. But that was still quite pricey.
Yeah, but we're not sitting here talking about the Neo Geo 7. Do you know what I mean?
No.
What's the next Neo Geo going to be like, Dan? I don't know, the arcades have all shut down.
Well, we don't have arcades. Yeah, that's the problem. And lesser rivals were the Philips CDI.
Which said about that the better.
I think you mentioned did you mention
CD
in the
Interactive? Yes, I did. Yeah, it's got an infrared remote control, Dan.
Yeah, and it had a funny Zelda game on it as well, didn't it?
Oh my God! Yeah, Zelda Wand of Gamelon.
Yeah. And infrared remote control says it all.
Yeah.
And the other ones were 3DO and the Atari Jaguar. So these were superior on paper, but weren't supported well, and the high cost kept them out of the mainstream.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
So, and I was
we mentioned those in our failed to launch. I'm just going to do them all. Look, you can look up here. There'll be a link to that as well. It's just going to be hundreds of them.
Just put it on. Do you remember like the Generation game, a conveyor belt?
Every time we mention one, it just goes up.
Every now put Mario smiling. Yeah.
Yes, you will be sick of gaming views by the end of this video.
So I'm only going to pick a couple of things here. So it's got like a SNES. I had a SNES v Genesis because they were the main competitors, side-by-side breakdown. So the Genesis had apparently the faster CPU. It had faster sprite handling on screen, and but the Sega Genesis had 512 colours with 64 on screen, but the SNES had 32,768 with 256 on screen.
That's a bit more, isn't it?
Yeah. The Genesis had a 6-channel Yamaha sound chip, which was more arcade-like, but the SNES, we said, had the 8-channel Sony chip, which was higher quality music. Orchestral. Genesis had the 3 buttons. It later had a 6-button pad, but then we've said already that the SNES had the 6 buttons, the A, B, X, Y with left. Oh, and I think it also did it introduce the shoulder buttons? I think it might have.
Pretty sure it did,
yeah. So the mascot we know is Mario Sonic for the 2.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, I think that's it. With global sales, it won, if we want to use that term, quotes. It had, we said 49 million sales for the SNES and 30
Maybe not
to
propagating the
35.
console wars, Dan.
Yeah, 30. I love it. I said I didn't, but I love them. 30 to 35 million for the Genesis. So, yeah, that's how they stacked up against each other. Yeah, ultimately it said who was a winner. In Japan, it was the SNES because of its loyalty, brand loyalty in RPGs. In North America, it was a close battle. It said Genesis led early, but SNES came on strong later with the better late-gen games. Europe, it was a slight Genesis lead due to the earlier launch and stronger sports and arcade presence, which I found interesting. The sports games mean a lot to us.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it before. It's all right for people to be wrong.
Well,
SNES was better. Full stop. The end.
Legacy, we said it had 49 millions of sales, considered one of the greatest consoles of all time. I think that's true. I mean, the Switch, you said yourself you can still get games on the Switch, and it's your testament to people still playing them now. We mentioned the SNES Classic Edition, and again, I think, we're not getting all of these little minis, are we? So it's...
No, you're not. I mean, they did a NES one, they've done a SNES one, they did a PlayStation one. I think only the True Classics get them down. That's
True Classics. So
I'm waiting for an Xbox one.
Yeah.
Complete the set.
Do you know what I like? If anyone's listening, I would love, or just remake it actually. I would love the Game Boy to come back. I would love a Game Boy. Also, this feels like Christmas. Also, Santa, I would like, I think it might be coming out, but I would love another Amiga preloaded with like all the big games. So can I have the Amiga? The Commodore 64 is right. Anyway, sorry, this is my wish list.
Of course, little boy. Anything else you'd like? It's a bit early.
Yeah, never too early. What else? A couple of other things. So yeah, I did have the bit about the controller. So yeah, it introduced the L and R buttons, the shoulder buttons. Sorry, we loved. It did have backwards compatibility of a sort. So
fill me in. What do you mean?
There were a lot of adapters and unofficial mods that were released to play NES games. And I think I do remember, was that when we started seeing, I remember the Game Boy had some specifically funny, we talked about it, but was in the late 80s and early 90s the era where we had all those third-party, huge, ugly plastic bolt-ons and add-ons.
Into the top. And I think I had a couple of those. The Turbo, oh my God, I don't know what it was called now. It was called a Turbo something. I'll see if I can dig it out and find some images of these things. But yeah, you had these third-party adapters, let's call them, that claimed to do certain things. I don't know what they were doing, whether they would for cheats as well, for cheat codes and stuff.
I was going to say that. I keep meaning you used to have a thing that you plugged like the cartridges into.
That's it.
Game Shark. Was it Game Shark? No, I feel like I want to say Game Shark or something like that. And then you would get codes in magazines or something that you would put into them.
I can't remember precisely, but yeah, mainly because I didn't have a lot of interest in that sort of stuff. But there were definitely those things floating about. It was a weird time. It was you wouldn't see it now.
Well, like to go back to the Game Boy, I remember having a slide-on light for it to play at night. But there was one that's in my head. It was like a Transformer. It was like Optimus Prime trailer. It felt like in size. You put the Game Boy in it, but it had a massive magnifying screen. It had speakers that folded out.
I remember
a proper joystick. It was just insane, wasn't it?
It was mental. It was. But there were, even for the home consoles, there were add-ons that you could plug into the slot and then put a game into the thing that did certain things. I can't remember precisely, but I'll find some peripherals that they released. But it was a madness of time.
If you can. And this sentence here frightens me a bit. It said cartridges from Japan could be played on North American systems with slight physical modification. I can see kids in playgrounds saying, you've just got to snap this little bit off.
No, there were little tabs on the inside of them.
Oh, right,
and I don't know if this was true on the US over to the UK or if it was, but there were little tabs, and if you broke them off, you could fit them in your SNES. I'm sure it was that. I'm sure you could fit them in the SNES.
So I think
all these things come flooding back.
They do, don't they? They do. I mean, and this is it. Look, I think this is where I'm going to end. I mean, I had kind of more stuff, but it's just retreading the same thing. I mean, ultimately, everywhere you look, it's just saying that the SNES kind of did help to redefine both kind of like music in games, the type of games you got, like exploration, non-linearity, game cartridges like Star Fox used the Super FX chips for real-time 3D graphics on the cartridge. Some games stored save data directly onto it, which was a key evolution for RPGs. Couch multiplayer sort of boomed because of it. You know, it's like I said, I know you can wax superlative about this, but it does seem like it was a machine that had a lot of history. And just to finish it off, it was saying ultimately that the winner of whether you got a Genesis or SNES, it said if you like depth, polish, and RPGs, you should go for a SNES. If you wanted speed, edge, and arcade action, go for a Genesis.
Yeah.
So,
and again, you know, that's broadly how they were marketed, right? I mean, they certainly played to their strengths. But there was one game that deserves a special mention over and above A Link to the Past, which was a game that I became totally absorbed in, and one of the other few at the time RPGs I went through and finished to completion, and that was The Secret of Mana, and still a game I absolutely love to this day. And you know I have a thing about JRPGs, and I'm not a massive fan of them, but Secret of Mana. But again, because I think it was action oriented combat rather than the stop and start, you know, one that you have with a lot of Final Fantasy, well, all 5 Final Fantasy games pretty much, because it had that. It was more akin to Zelda than it was, you know, a true JRPG, and I loved that game. And I had, you know, they released it on iOS quite a few years back, and I picked up on that and played it again, and I think it's on the back compat for the Switch 2 as well. So I'm gonna have another bash at it as well after I finish Zelda, because it was just a phenomenal game. And if you do get a chance to go and pick it up, it is a brilliant game. A bit janky and old now, but it is brilliant.
See, I think that's what I missed out, was those old classic RPGs. You know, because you know I love my RPGs, and I think sometimes now it can be hard to go back to those. But I'm sure I've seen it. I'm sure you can get it on the Xbox. I'd have to have a look.
There's a lot of Secret Manas. Yeah, they did a revamped version of one of them, or a few of them recently. But the first one in its original, you know, fluff dress up is just brilliant. I just remember now, like, swapping weapons out and getting the whip, and it's just such a joy to play, and swapping your characters around. And
yeah, I think, you know,
anyway,
something, you know, I've thought of as well is that we discussed last week we finished the episode with the question, is where's innovation potentially going to come from if we start losing? Now, just goes to show, I think the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo, though, it was a great time for kids like you, right? And myself, in terms of being a gamer, the way they pushed each other. And like I said, I go right back to the start of the episode or the recount, where we said, it was a methodical approach to what they wanted to do for this console has to be the major part of why it was so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was a defining moment in console history for two reasons. One, because it was one of the two key players in the market, and it did something different to the other one. And we talked about differentiation. But the other reason, without it, you would never have had a PlayStation.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, I mean, it did give us that. Yeah,
it gave us the PlayStation. You know, for all the wrong reasons, maybe.
Yeah.
But without it, Sony wouldn't have got their backup. Wouldn't have spurred them to develop what they did. Wouldn't have got them to do what they do. And I genuinely don't believe we'd be in this position in the console era that we are now, with waiting on the PlayStation 6 and the, you know, Microsoft ZP or whatever they're going to call it, because they can't do numbering. You know, we wouldn't be here. We'd be somewhere else. Don't get me wrong.
The biggest what if in history, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Huge. The biggest what if. What if they didn't shaft each other, or shaft Sony, or what if they didn't even bring them on? Yeah.
Madness.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I had to bring to the table for the SNES. Was there anything else from you?
No, I think, you know, just like I said earlier, I think it was fascinating how they went about, you know, because we'd spoken previously last week about, you know, their not dearth of gaming, but the fact that they were very strict in terms of their exclusivity and who they worked with, almost led to them to Sony doing that in a very different and much more successful way. And Nintendo, I think, only really recently have started opening their eyes to that. With the Switch and the Switch 2, having more third-party games and not being as closed shop in terms of who they're bringing on board and how they want those developers to create things for them. Even up to kind of the Wii and the Wii U, it's still felt very locked down. But now with the Switch, and even more so with the Switch 2, they've broadened and opened up their market because they realised that without that, they probably are in a little bit of a hiding to nothing. Because there are so many games in the market and so many publishers, and I say so many publishers, most of them are Microsoft now, but there are so many, different games coming out that they can afford to be more open and selective. Still selective with the games there because they don't have everything. But even today, Borderlands 4 is coming out on, it's one for Joey, that's Borderlands. Borderlands 4 is coming out on Switch 2. It's going to launch a couple of weeks later, because of development time. But, Randy Pitchford's kind of, shouting from the rooftops how he loves it and thinks it's an amazing console and great to develop for. So, there's good stuff happening with it. But yeah, just, I'm glad they're changing their ways slightly because the Switch 2 is a lovely console and it would be great to play a wider, broader category of games on it now. And it's just a shame, or maybe it's good that you didn't have that with a SNES.
I don't know, but the one thing that I have to say I've loved doing about these episodes, so, I'll link in the PlayStation one we did and the Xbox, is that it's so easy to sit here or to say in a conversation the SNES was a classic console, the PlayStation was a classic console, and look, and they are right, and even at the time when they're special, but it's only now with the benefit of history where you look and you see, right, well, this is what it gave us, this is what it defined. I mean, like I said, it kind of, I was really surprised when I realised it was a SNES that gave us the button layout that we now love today. Yeah. So I think doing this just really gives you that appreciation for. It's not just a buzz phrase. Oh, the SNES was classic. It was iconic for all the reasons we've kind of said in the last hour and a half.
I get all misty eyed, mate, because we sit here and talk about it, and I just remember those days with such fondness, and and truly. People who go out and, talking out your arse or whatever, but it genuinely was a time when everything you played felt brand new. It didn't feel like a retread of something that had come before, right? And there was the occasional one like Mega Man or whatever, you played something similar, but there was always a different level of innovation even in those ones. But, almost 70, 80% of the games you played felt like fresh and new and things you'd never played before. You said it yourself, SimCity came out on SNES. Yeah, not SimCity 6, not SimCity 8, not Sim, World or Sim History or whatever it is. The very first of its kind that you'd never played a city builder before. Yeah. And now you were there playing it on a SNES, so it was awkward as hell to play, but you could do it, Yeah. So it genuinely felt like a wonderful time to be alive and be gaming. And at the right, at that age for me, 14, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. Well, look. If you're listening and watching, I hope you've enjoyed that run through of what was the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom, should I say?
And the Super Famicom.
Yeah. Dan, before we go, anything from yourself?
I would just like to give a shout out to my brother-in-law, Nick. Thank you very much for subscribing. And if you do have the opportunity and do care to, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when our new content comes out, because there's quite a lot coming your way. Hopefully the next episode after this one is going to be a little bit special, but let's wait and see. If it happens, it will happen, and if it's not, it'll still be special because it'll be me and Dan doing something else. That's it from me. Thanks to all our wonderful listeners and watchers.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to people that do comment. So I did mean to bring them to this episode, but I think the current episode we've had, the Middle Age podcast and Howdy Beans podcast, leave us notes on the console wars. Yeah, and honestly, we do love it. We'll react, we'll respond, not react. We'll react as well, but we'll respond to any comment we get. So yeah, if it takes you, do drop us a note on there. Let us know what you think about these episodes. I think that's all I had to say as well.
I think that's more than enough. I think you've done the SNES a good service, Dan.
if Nintendo hears this and wants to sponsor us because of after that, we'll leave it there. But I think I should stop talking now. So catch
Get
us
seal of approval, Dan.
Yeah. Stay tuned next week for another episode of Gaming Views.